The name of my course says it all, how to actually sell a TV show organically. I think there are so many classes out there about how to write a script, and that's great, and that's so important.
Right.
But there's not a lot of information about how to actually sell the show and how to do it in a way that doesn't feel like scammy or weird.
Right.
I think a lot of people have a contact that they don't want to approach or don't want to bother, or they have no context and have no idea how to get their pitch seen. And so I want to give people information so that they have both the content they need to sell a show and the relationships that they need, not only to get that show sold, but to sell other shows in the future. So it's about teaching someone how to fish, not just giving them a fish. You want to teach them how to fish so they can do it over and over and over again.
And like you said, not just to write the script, but to get it made. Many people probably have great scripts sitting around in a closet somewhere, but does it actually come to fruition?
Exactly. Like, how do you get the team so that you get paid for it?
What is the biggest obstacles that people aren't aware of to getting, let's say if somebody's sitting here saying, you know what, I actually have a great script. I think I have a great script.
Great.
Now, what's standing in my way?
I think the biggest thing standing in your way if you have a great script is getting someone to read that script, right? Because you're asking for someone, if it's a pilot script, that's 30 pages. If it's a comedy, it's, 60 pages. If it's long form, it's longer than that if it's a movie script.
Right.
And you're in a time where people are inundated with scripts, right?
You're not the only one
You're not the only one who wrote the script. So if you don't have a way to succinctly communicate what makes your story special, why they have to read that script, you're just not going to get any traction. If you don't know how to outreach to people so that they read your script, you could have the best script in the world, but it doesn't matter if nobody knows about it.
Right. Now, let's say you get somebody to read it. What are the other things that stand away from it than getting made?
Okay.
Because let's say if somebody reads it and that person likes it, but doesn't it take a whole system to approve a TV show?
It does. It does take a whole system to approve a TV show. But I'll also say you actually don't need a script to sell a TV show.
Really?
Really. I have sold, let's see. Well, okay. I'm trying to think of how many of the things I've sold didn't even have a script. But the reason that is because ideally you get paid to write the script.
Oh.
So
you pitch the idea for the show.
Pitch the idea for the show. So now this is different depending on what kind of creative you are and what role you want in your show, right? So if you're a writer, you want to be the writer of the show, then you need to have a script to show that you can write, to show that you have the skills, to show that you can, do the arc, do the characters, do all the things.
Right.
But actually, your ideal is to get paid to write the script. So you have a pitch and then a sample of the kind of writing you can do. And then you say, now pay me to write this story that I have pitched you.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then now as an actor, let's say you're an actor, you're not a writer. So you don't need to write a script. What you need to do is build the team. You need to find a writer. And so maybe they'll be part of the pitch process. Or if you can get a good relationship with a production company, you can pitch to the production company and then they have writers who they've worked with in the past, who they want to work with.
Yeah.
And so you start building out your team. So when you really think about, okay, what am I bringing to this project? You can build a team to fill in those other spots.
Right.
And I think that's, going back to your earlier question, I think that's the big mistake a lot of people make is that they think they have to do everything. You don't got to do everything. You got to figure out what's the unique thing that you bring to the table, and it might be your authentic voice. It might be that you know the story in a way that no one else does. It might be that you know a story that hasn't been told before. That's value. So if you can, around that authentic story, start to build a team of a writer who really gets it and who can help articulate it in that structured ways that maybe if you haven't written a script before, you don't know how to do. If you can get the executive producer that has experience and that has relationships on board. If you can get someone who's, I don't know, a bit like some sort of piece of intellectual property that has a known audience, then you have a package, right? And then that's a lot easier to get moving and sold. So I look at it that way as opposed to just a script. Now, like I said, if you're a writer and you want to be the writer on the show, you do need at least one script that shows that you can execute.
Got it.
But you don't necessarily need the script for the show that you want to sell.
That makes sense. Wow. And when people are making these shows, are there certain categories of shows that are needed? Like, for example, if there's already a poppin' cop buddy TV show, they're not probably looking for another one. right?
Well, that's interesting. So generally, and it also depends on who you're pitching to, right?
Right.
So one thing I like to point out is that not all pitches are the same. Let me say that differently. Not all people that you're pitching to are the same. Not all buyers are the same, right?
Right.
So usually early on, you'll pitch to a production company or someone who has an overall deal. Now, after the strike, I think overalls are going away for the most part. So
what was an overall deal, for those who don't know?
Overall deal was where one particular studio or network would offer an executive producer, like, here, we're going to pay you this amount, and your job is just to bring us ideas. So they don't take their ideas to other studios generally. They were paid like a flat fee to
go find great ideas
and bring them in. Right. Okay. So a lot of times they got called golden handcuffs because you could only have shows go forward at the studio that you had the overall with.
Got it.
So after the strike, it's not clear if people are going to be having overalls as much anymore.
Okay.
But for a time, that was one way to get something sold, was to take it to someone who had an overall, because it was their whole job to be bringing ideas.
I keep imagining somebody wearing overalls every time you say that.
I get more into it in my course, and the image in the course is someone in overalls. And I don't want to get too. Do you remember what your question was? Because I don't want to get too far off it.
Oh, about are the buyers? Do they have certain categories that they're looking for?
Yes. Okay. So the short answer is, like, a studio or a network will generally have some sort of, someone at the top will say, we're looking for a lot of, I don't know, like international dramas right now. Like, this spy thriller is doing really well. Can we see if we can get other spy thrillers?
Got it. And so there's always some kind of in the moment demand for certain kinds of stories.
Yes, but
that's happening regardless of what you're creating.
Exactly.
They're looking for certain things. You might give them something that they're not looking for, and they might love it, but they are looking for certain categories at any given time.
Yes. And now I'll point out two stories that I think are really helpful to think about this. Okay. Now, Shonda Rhimes, she does a masterclass, and she talks about how the first pilot that she got written, I don't know if it was sold or not, but it didn't end up going forward. It was about war correspondents. It was about female war correspondents who were hard drinking and do a thing and great. But when she took it out, people were no one was looking for it at the time. She was like, okay, what are you looking for? They're like, we want a soapy medical drama. She's like, you want soapy medical drama? I got you, baby. And she wrote Grey's Anatomy and pitched it and responded to what the market wanted. Amazing. But she did it in her own voice, which I think was important. The first show I sold was called How to Be a White Guy. And it was somewhat based on the experience of myself and my writing partner at the time, and trying to move projects forward, and kind of getting waylaid, and that one of our projects ended up getting given to a white guy, basically. So we kind of wrote a show about it. So that came more from our personal experience. So all of that is to say that responding to market forces can be really helpful, and yet having something specific to you is also really helpful. And I find that, that show that I sold, the first show we sold, didn't end up going forward, but it ended up building the relationships that I needed to be able to sell things much more quickly as I went on. So
people can buy a show without making it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It happens all the time. And so that's the biggest thing. I feel like oftentimes for a first show, it's good to do something from your own story in your own voice, because that's how you're going to build the relationships. And then once you have the relationships, you'll have the relationship to say, hey, what are you guys looking for? And they'll say this. You're like, bet, baby.
So you think it's better to get in the door with your original idea?
I absolutely do. I really do. I think that's just my opinion. I think there are 1,000 ways to peel a potato.
Yeah, but we're here to hear your opinion.
In my opinion, I'm all about the authenticity. That's the thing that you bring to the table that no one else can bring. So I'm a big fan of tapping into that, especially to build the relationships, because then the right opportunities are going to come to you because they know your authentic voice, because people know who you are.